Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us, whether you're watching us live right now or on the recording later. We appreciate you being here. I'm Jeff Tunn. Many of you know me through technology leadership, consulting, or perhaps the Lewis and Clark, A New Way Forward program. Others may know me through my new book, Uncharted Moments, Love, Legacy, and the Lewis and Clark Trail. Today is a chance to bring those worlds together. When people first hear about the book, they often assume it's a history book, a travel memoir, or perhaps a love story. In truth, it's a little bit of all those, but beneath those layers is a simple question. What are the moments that shape us long before we realize how important they will become? The title Uncharted Moments comes from the idea of conjectural maps. Those places where the cartographers simply don't know what's out there. Lewis and Clark faced those uncertainties on the frontier, but all of us face those every day in our lives, in our careers. As leaders, we spend a lot of time talking about strategy, execution, technology, and of course, results. Today, I'd like us to talk about something different: the experiences, relationships, setbacks, opportunities, and those unexpected turns that change us as people and ultimately influence how we lead. Today, I'm joined by three leaders. They're also three dear friends, and I respect each one of them tremendously. Rather than me introducing them, I'm going to let them introduce themselves and share how they know me and why they agreed to this conversation in the first place. So we're going to start with Aleta. Aleta, why don't you join us on stage here?
All right. Good morning, Jeff. Thank you so much. So my name is Aleta Jeffress, and from a technology perspective, I'm currently the Chief Operating and Technical Officer for NTT Data. And I have that role for their state, local, and education business unit. And so I'm happy to be back and have a conversation with Jeff. We've been friends for, gosh, a long time. Since my days at the state of Indiana, actually, which is where I'm originally from. So really look forward to the conversation and unpacking more of what you talked about.
Awesome. And thank you for agreeing to be on the show, Aleta. I really appreciate it. Absolutely. Next up is Alina. Why don't you come on stage, Alina?
Hi, good morning, Jeff. Thank you so much for having me. Alina Walters. I am the CIO for the city of Lakewood in Colorado, and grateful to be here. Jeff, if you remember, well, I met you obviously through Aleta, because Aleta knows everyone and is amazing at making connections. But we met almost exactly 3 years ago. It was in May of 2023 when we did our first podcast, and it was on digital gardening, which was such a fun podcast. And I really appreciated how you led the discussion. It was my first podcast, and you made it very, very easy to talk through. I'm excited to be here to, unpack the book. What an incredible story. I'm so honored to have had the privilege to get that advanced copy and read it. And it really made me reflect on so many things. So I'm looking forward to diving into those heartfelt truths that make up our lives.
That's awesome. And I forgot the first one was digital gardening. I had forgotten that. That was so, that is so cool. And you were on the show several times, which I so appreciate. Let's bring Ron on. Last but not least, Ron.
Hi there, Jeff. Thank you for this. So I'm Ron West. I'm an executive coach and the creator of the Chrysalis Leadership Development System, based here in Austin, Texas. And for the past couple of decades, I've had the privilege of working with leaders around the world, helping them navigate complexity and digital transformation. So I've known Jeff now since we worked together many years ago in Indiana. And now through our shared interest in kind of all things leadership. And I'll say this, Jeff, you're one of the finest humans I've ever known. And that's one of the reasons I was excited to join this particular conversation, because to me, Uncharted Moments is not really a book about exploration. It's a book about being human.
Yeah.
Oh, I wonder if they're the same thing after all. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's about the moments that kind of shape us long before we understand their significance. And I found myself reflecting on many of those moments in my own life as I read it. And I'm really looking forward to exploring some of them with everyone today. So thank you for the invitation.
You know, I thought of you as I was thinking of putting this show together, Ron, and for our listeners and viewers, Ron was actually my boss for 5 years as in my first CIO role, and he is responsible in a large part for the Lewis and Clark leadership program that I do. I was sitting in his office one day and I was retelling yet another Lewis and Clark story. And I think he was really just getting tired of listening to me. So he suggested that I try to find the leadership lessons in the Lewis and Clark story. And you know my response? Do you remember my response, Ron? I laughed. I said, these guys have been dead 200 years. What are we going to learn from them as leaders? That led to a book, that led to a leadership program that I still do. And yes, so Ron, thank you for that. Now, I want to dive a little bit into the book, but as I said, this is more about those unexpected twists, the human experience of leadership. But I want to start with surprises and what surprised you about the book. And to kick us off, I'm going to share what has surprised me since the book came out. You know, as an author, you sit down and you write, and you're writing your story, a story, and you're never really sure how it's going to land with people. You know, I thought the book was about Lewis and Clark, about rivers and road trips, and history. There's a little bit of history in there, but it was really more about relationships, shared journeys, and the moments that shape us. Before we even realize they're important, the ones that we reflect on and go back and think about. The biggest surprise that has happened when I've started sharing this in the world is I'm hearing from people about their journeys. They're seeing it's a mirror. They're reading the story that I wrote, our story, Carmen and my story, and they're seeing themselves in that. They're seeing their own journey, their own expedition. They're responding to the uncertainty, the love story, the friendship, the losses, and the idea that life rarely unfolds according to plan. So you each have had a chance to read the book, and I'd love for you to share what surprised you as you were reading it. And just whoever wants to go first, just jump right in.
I can jump in. I am shocked at the clarity of your memories. And, you know, maybe you weren't aware of how clear your memories were until you started to write them. But whenever I look back on my, you know, on my life, and the clearest memories I realize are the ones that made the biggest difference. And I loved that. So that throughout reading the book continuously surprised me. And also the waterfall and snowball impact of those points in time and your recognition of them and their impact on your life's journey. That was also really incredible to read and a surprise. I didn't know what to expect. So
Yeah. Again, people think it's going to be a history book, a travel memoir, and some of that deep reflection throws them off. I will say that I credit a lot to journals that I kept at the time and the thousands of photographs that we have that bring those memories back to life, right? You see them and it's like, oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Photographs are key. Those have really changed my memory of my journey, and especially that with my family. And even at work, we take a lot of pictures, and it's so much fun to look back and rebuild those moments that you do forget about otherwise. So
Yeah.
All right, who wants to go next?
I can go. So I think, first of all, thank you for sharing kind of a preview copy with me. I always appreciate that. And you've done that before. So, always happy to read what you've written and developed. And so, as I read that book, I was like, I didn't really realize how much of a thing the Lewis and Clark Trail really was. I mean, I know that you were into that, and I knew that, you were a fan of history. And of course, we all kind of learn the basics of that, when we're in school, but just the ability to really like engage with that for so many years in so many different ways, right? With the events, and here's the trail, and here's where you wanted to go. And, that is I'll say a lifetime commitment. It really has been. And so I didn't expect quite the depth, I think, that was really in there and in that. And aside from the fact that I learned a lot that I didn't know, which was great, but and the fact that Carmen was willing to go along with you on that ride. I mean, there were times where it wasn't her thing, and that's fine. And we all have significant others that maybe are not as thrilled with what we do as they would like. But she stood by you and she supported that. And it wasn't just something minor. I mean, it was a big endeavor, and probably a lot of vacation time spent, really going along that trail. But yet along the whole way, there were so many moments of like peace, and I can just, you made it really easy to visualize, write the story. So, at the end of the day, outside your RV with your drinks, and I can just see it, every day. So that was really cool for me. And just knowing you as long as I have, it just really it was just a really, it was really genuine. And I just was really pleased by that. It was great to read the book, and I couldn't put it down. So I just kept reading because I wanted to see what the next day was. So I think from that perspective, it just felt like really being able to share that with you. And I'm so glad that you put that out there, because it does make you think, here's something that together, what can we really do, and how can we really impact, and what does that really look like over the course of a lifetime? It was phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, and it's the shared hobbies, right? That it may not be your jam to start with. I probably just really dated myself with that one. But you do it because your significant other or your friend or whoever it happens to be is into it, and you find yourself kind of getting into that as well. So I appreciate that. Hey, Ron, how about you? You probably know me the longest of three of these folks. So.
Well, I was amused to find the reference to the RV, first of all. So at that level, that's the same RV that you and Carmen, they chased me across my first and second ride across Indiana on my bicycle.
That is correct. That we were your sag wagon. Is that what they call it? Yeah.
That's right. But it has to be this. I think my language is very much vulnerability. For you to, and Carmen, to open and share this story, I think what it reminded me is of the importance of sharing your own story, because all the lessons that you've hard-earned are there for others to benefit from. And so the big impact of me on the book, well, it wasn't even very well structured, very well organized, very easy to read, very deep, caused lots of thoughts to come back to me about my own life and where things have happened to me, for me, and for others. But for you to share that with the world, the biggest reminder is like, it's so important. Share your story. It is of value. It's going to help somebody else. None of us are in this on our own. None of us.
Well, I think there needs to be a book about the ride across Indiana, my friend. So for those that may not know, every year, I guess there's a bike ride from Terre Haute, Indiana, on the west side of Indiana, to Richmond, Indiana, on the east side. It's 170 miles, if I recall.
It's supposed to be 165, but if you get lost, as I did,
then it's 170.
It's 175.
Yes. And it is an incredible thing to watch. I can't imagine doing it, but I want to switch gears here a little bit to this concept of conjectural and where that came up for me. So I'm reading about Lewis and Clark. This was several years ago. I'm reading about Lewis and Clark, and I learned that they take a map with them. And I'm like, what? I thought they're the ones that drew the maps. Well, so I got a copy of the map from a friend of mine, gifted it to me. It's a lithograph of the map. And the entire West, where all of you live, had one word written on it: conjectural. They had no idea what was out there. The Missouri River was a dotted line just west of St. Louis, right? They were stepping into the unknown. And that concept of conjectural, what really hit me was that they decided to go anyway. They didn't know what was out there, but they decided to go. And when I think back on the most conjectural point in my life, has to be my divorce, right? I was, I don't know, 40 years old or close to that. I've been married for 2 decades, had 2 kids, thought I knew who I was. And then all of a sudden I wasn't that anymore. And I didn't know who I was becoming. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what led me to Carmen. You know, she was in my life as a distant friend at that time and a business acquaintance, but we got closer, obviously. But it also, I think, is part of what struck me about the Lewis and Clark journey and why I got so attached to it, was that concept of they're stepping into the unknown. They don't know what's ahead. You're putting one foot in front of the other. And to me, that's conjectural. You get divorced and you're looking out and you're standing at the edge of this blank map. And it's like, what in the hell do I do now? Right? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? What do I do? And I discovered Lewis and Clark on a pity party canoe trip that I had taken, actually, by accident. I stumbled onto parts of the story, and it became kind of my life's direction after that. So I want you to think about your own lives, and to the point that you're willing to share. I'm not asking you to reveal things that your significant other or your friends don't know. But what season of life for you felt conjectural? And Ron, since you went last the last time, I'm going to have you go first this time and pick on you.
I would love to. So the interesting thing is that the answer is most of them, right? So leaving school in England in the very early 70s, as everything was changing, like beyond recognition. And then another big one was relocating to the US in 1998.
You mean you're not from here? I couldn't tell.
You can't. I know I've got a great Texas accent now, but no, I'm not from here. Because the world here was about to change big time, right? And then doing this leadership development thing I've been working on for a decade now. And then more recently with AI, like I don't describe myself as an executive coach anymore. So I guess my own work in leadership development would suggest that that conjectural seasons, they're not really a lack of clarity. They're not a failure of clarity, really. They're developmental thresholds, right? So they're the moments when the mind can no longer honestly pretend that the old map still explains the territory.
I like that. I like that. We're going to have to quote you on that one in the social media that goes out after this. That was good. Alina, how about you?
Well, like Ron, I'm also not from the US. So when he said that, I was like, duh. Yep, that was pretty important. Coming to the US changed so much for me and made everything possible. And like Ron, every time I made a decision, right, that took me in a different direction, it was conjectural in some way. Yeah. And as I was thinking about what you were saying, Jeff, in Lewis and Clark, there was intention in taking risk. And those two are very interesting concepts. And I've always had intention with every decision that I made. I knew there were risks associated with those decisions. But I always wanted to find out what surprise outcome there would be. And so for me, my biggest conjectural moments had to deal with moving to the US, moving from Connecticut to Colorado after college and starting a life in Colorado, moving from Colorado to DC. And that's where I met my future husband, and we started a family, and then moving back to Colorado and working for the city of Lakewood and being a CIO and dealing with a teenage son who's amazing. Every day is conjectural at this point.
Well, I've learned something new about you. I did not realize that you had immigrated here to the U.S. That after knowing you for 3 years, that's an interesting fact to learn. So thanks for sharing that. But I think that what you say is true. There's so many moments in our lives that when you think about it, they're conjectural, and you're deciding to move ahead anyway. You're deciding to take that step. So thank you for sharing that. Aleta, how about you?
You know, when I was thinking about this question, two specific things came to mind. I think one of the most conjectural times was when I was in Indiana, and I had been working for the federal government at the time and had decided that, you know, that season was kind of over, and I had planned to take a summer off, and I ended up working at the state just through, you know, a friend of mine who at the time said, we need some help, come and work for us. And so really went into the state of Indiana, and specifically Department of Revenue, you know, as a consultant on a project that I knew nothing about. I had not done independent consulting really to that point before. So I really walked in and was like, okay, let's check it out. Let's see what's going to happen. And, you know, it was kind of a big deal. That's when Indiana, you know, misplaced all that money. And so, which was found. I'll just spoiler alert. But, you know, there were so many things that went into that experience of just being willing, you know, as Ron said earlier, kind of vulnerable, just to walk into something that was brand new to me. I really relied on the people who brought me there, you know, to really help. And not only did I learn a lot from those individuals, but I learned a lot about state, and I had magnificent leaders, you know, at that time at Department of Revenue. And so that really launched, just made such an impact, because I ended up being CIO for Department of Revenue, which in turn then led me to Colorado and the CIO role that I had there, and just really was a pivot point, you know, I think in from a career perspective. But walking in, it was just kind of unknown. What was this really going to look like? It was supposed to be, you know, we all do this. It was supposed to be 8 weeks, and it was 2 years because that's what happened. And then, you know, in 2024, at the end of 2024, so, you know, my husband and I, we had moved to a small town in Colorado, Elizabeth, and just through a series of events, and more importantly, through a series of relationships, we ended up purchasing an Oddfellows building in downtown Elizabeth. And you don't know much about the Oddfellows. That's a whole nother historical path. I learned a ton about what they do. They were kind of a social organization in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And we had the opportunity to really purchase that building with the intent to really be really involved in the local community there. And the building was built in 1897. We bought it as is. So there were a lot of things that we learned going through that process. But the people I met through a result of that, the work that we were able to do, we kind of call it the prep work, right? Because ultimately we're probably not going to keep that building, but through a whole other series of events, but just the learning and the possibilities, right? And so kind of leaning into that unknown at the time was, it was a little scary, but at the same time, we had the opportunity to really be leaders and be examples. And we did a beautiful mural on the side of that building that, you know, 20,000 people drive by every day, and worked with the state to do that. So, and the town. So just lots of possibilities. I think really leaning into the possibility of what could be out there, but sometimes that's very conjectural.
Yes, yes. And I've seen pictures of the mural that you did on the building. It's beautiful. And what an experience. It always made me think of the HGTV show Hometown, right?
Yeah.
What you guys were doing, right? Now I want to stay with you, Aleta, for this next question. When you think back on your career, these uncharted moments, these conjectural moments, how has that influenced the way you lead today?
You know, I think, again, being open, I've always been a proponent of saying yes, even though you're not quite ready. Because, you know, there's a lot of people who are like, I can't do that. I don't, here are the 5 things I don't have. I'm like, but here are the 15 that you do,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And so that's probably one of the biggest things, is to just say yes. And sometimes you're going to have to figure it out, you know, figure it out later. So I think that's one of the things I kind of come back to a lot of the time is taking the risk. I'm not a huge risk taker typically, right? If you look at my career, it's been very, you know, progressive and stair step, and probably weren't really a lot of things that were conjectural until you get to the point where you know more of what you know, if that makes sense. And then I think you're more willing to take like a calculated risk, or, you know, you understand more about what the outcome could be than maybe you couldn't see before. So, so really, again, I think leaning more into the yes and leaning into the possibilities of what could be, and knowing that, you know, things will be okay. Things will turn out the way they're supposed to. And as long as you're a good steward of what you've been handed and what you can manage, then take advantage of it. Because I think for all of us, you know, one decision could take us a variety of paths. So be open to the variety of paths.
So as you think about the people that are following you, your staff, or sometimes it's not people that report into you, but as a leader, you have people that follow you. How do you convey those thoughts that you just shared to them? Is it in direct conversation? How do you do that?
Well, conversations like this, you know, I told a couple of my coworkers about this yesterday, actually. And as many, I'll say this, I will have as many individual conversations really as I can. And there's a lot of reason for that. When I moved to Colorado, people were very generous with their time, and from a networking perspective, you know, people spend a lot of time with me. So I really feel compelled, right, to do that for other people. And I also, when I share with people or at events, I'm like, people, we all know more than we think we do. And it kind of goes back to Ron talking about sharing your story, right? We all know more than we think we do. So the people who are coming in behind us, or the people that we're mentoring or sponsoring, or whatever that looks like, share what's happening, because and it might seem minuscule to you, or it might seem not important, but to them it's huge. Like when I worked, I had some people, even from my very first job out of school, and 10 years later, people reached out to me and said, I just want you to know this meeting impacted my life.
Wow.
And when that happens to you a couple times, you're much more aware of your meetings and who you talk to and how you talk to people. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be the masses, but the one-on-one conversation, for me, I really try and be intentional with that all the time.
Beautiful.
Well, and since you mentioned Ron, I'm gonna bring Ron in on this question. How have your uncharted moments influenced your leadership?
So I had trouble picking one, right? So, because that's my whole life really has been about that. But the key moment that I remembered was when I left the UK, 1998. I asked my executive assistant at the time, "Hey, have you got any words of wisdom for me?" And I was expecting like a big old slap on the back and, "Oh my God, you're awesome, off you go." And she said, "Well, it's amazing how much you get done. It's just a pity there has to be so much damage in your wake."
Oh,
No, I managed to successfully ignore it for the first like 12 months, but eventually it caught up with me. And although it took me a long time to get past it as criticism and realize, oh my God, it was absolute wisdom.
yeah.
So since that time, I've really been, I've attended at least a couple of leadership developments, some things every year. I retrained and became an executive coach. I developed my own leadership program, and really all I'm doing is I'm coaching myself. I'm trying to heal from all of that, right? So it took me a long time to sort of learn success and stewardship that really not the same things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now instead of saying like, what are we creating here? It's more like, how are we being while we're creating all of that? And I guess many of all of those uncharted moments have been about learning to navigate even when the map disappears, right? So, and I'm right there now, right, at a place where it's much less about manifesting and achievement and goals, and more about let's see what emerges.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it's so key. I think what Aleta said there is absolutely right. Like, share that story, because those magic moments are incredible when you're able to hold the light for someone else in that way, just with a word, a phrase. It's quite astounding, really, how the whole thing works.
It is. And those moments when someone that you influenced comes back and shares that influence, as Aleta was sharing, and I know you shared as well, Ron. So Alina, when you think about those uncharted moments in your journey, how have they impacted the way you lead today?
I've always been a person with a let's go for it attitude, but I didn't really, and I knew that about myself without having the words. And it's not probably until later in life where I realized that was driven by much like Aleta was saying, yes, like, why not? Why not try it? Why not go for it? Why not try this new position or move to this new place, or, use a new tool, try a new sport? Why not? What's the worst that can happen? Only something good will come out of it.
Yeah.
And so looking back, it's sharing those stories with my friends and with staff, where I also find that I find most rewarding.
Yeah.
And because it brings everything to a common conversation. We all have something going on all the time. We've all had some experience at some point that has been positive, negative, and we all have something to take away from every conversation. And so being a part of that with everyone that I interact with is just becoming more and more meaningful. And how I like to listen and learn and grow. And it coming back to your first question, Jeff, again, one of the reasons I was so excited about this conversation, because I knew that Aleta and Ron and you would have such meaningful insights to share. And I always walk away feeling inspired and, and looking forward to sharing what I've learned with others as well.
And you as well. You're in that group as well. I always, whenever you and I have conversations, whether it's podcast or podcast prep, I always come away with a new nugget or just feeling good. Right? Sometimes sharing that. I think when I think about my uncharted moments, my conjectural moments, and I know the three of you can. This will resonate with, but I got to a leadership position because I was good at writing code, not because I was good at leadership, right? I was the expert I was good at that. And I think what I've learned through these uncharted moments, this conjectural territory, is you don't have to know everything as a leader. You surround yourself with good people. You learn to ask great questions, and you rely on the fact that you probably can help figure it out with a group of the right people around you. And I think that's one of the things that I take away when I look at my career in breadth is you don't have to be the smartest person in the room to lead. Thank God, because I am not. Now I know we're running up on time here a little bit, and I've got two more questions, and the second one is not what you think it is, just so you know, just to be prepared. So I want you to think about a moment that you're most grateful for that never appeared on your resume. What moment that you're most grateful, but it's not something that you write down on your resume? And Alina, I'm going to pick on you to go first.
I'm going to hop on Ron's train here and say it's the moments of honest feedback, because you're never maybe aware of them at the time. You don't process it fully when it's given, and in retrospect you're like, wow, that was really meaningful. And I had a similar moment, Ron. Many years ago, I was working for Raytheon under a new leader, and this was many years ago. And we had come out of a meeting where, you know, I was very engaged, and again, let's go. And the leader was, you know, it told me, Alina, you need to just listen sometimes. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And I swear that plays in my head still to this day, every day. And I walk away from meetings, and I'll probably walk away from this podcast and be like, less is okay, you know, but it's the energy that sometimes takes over. But yeah, it's those moments of honest feedback that I think shape us. And there is nothing negative in that feedback.
Yeah.
It's always something positive that you can take away and build with. So yeah. So
I love that, because you're exactly right. Feedback always has something, even if it's the worst thing that you've ever heard. There's probably a nugget or an element of truth somewhere in there that if you peel it back, you can learn from it. I love that. Aleta, how about you?
You know, when I was thinking about this, it's definitely the lessons learned all come from the people. I mean, we can manage tech or widgets or whatever it is all the time, but it really comes back to the people. And I think the one thing that stands out to me repeatedly is really the ability to seek to understand first. And that can be, you know, whether you're leaving something in your wake or, you know, you've got the let's go attitude, whatever it is, which are all great things. But for me, it's really the people who have come back and kind of just reiterated that. Ask questions, seek to understand. You don't know what's going on with that person today. If somebody's maybe reacting in a way that's not typical for them or unusual, you know, just ask those questions first. And that's probably taken me pretty far when it comes to being able to manage people or assemble teams or, you know, referee the disagreements at work about how things maybe should go versus how they're actually going. But that's really what stood out to me.
People, so important, and sometimes we just don't talk about that enough. And it's the human side of our leadership that really helps us grow and helps the people that we're working with grow. Ron, how about you? What's a moment you're most grateful for that doesn't show up on your resume? And I know your resume is like 300 pages long.
Yeah. I've lived in 25 different homes. So yeah, there's a few stories. I listed all of the people that have made a big impact on my life in a book I wrote for my grandkids called 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗶𝗁𝗶 legacy. So it's kind of funny, but I picked one from there, and it's actually the move to the US in '98. It never really shows up in any kind of resume or reporting on myself or anything like that. But although it looked like a career move, it was actually life-changing, right? So it was the first time that I realized what I thought I believed was actually shaped by culture and family and early life experiences. And what I discovered was what I thought was normal, that was obviously true, was just another way of seeing the world.
Yeah.
So I began to understand, and this is what really impacted my leadership and me, was like different people can experience the exact same reality and make very different sense of it, right? So I developed a lot more curiosity and humility about that, and learned to start to question my assumptions rather than defend them.
Yeah.
So it was that was really the beginning for me in how leaders interpret reality. And looking back, that's probably impacted my leadership more than anything else. I thought I was crossing an ocean, really, but what I was really doing was crossing a boundary in my own thinking.
Again, another quotable quote.
More exploring, right? Feel free.
I think for me and the three of you, because you've had a chance to read the book, you will find this as no surprise. But it was a phone call I received on February 7th, 1995 from this woman named Carmen Hillenberg. And it has changed the next 25 years of my life. I mean, I was kind of stuck in middle management, still loved to code, didn't see myself as a leader. And over time, she and another good friend of mine kind of drug me kicking and screaming into management and leadership. It changed the trajectory of my career. It changed the trajectory of my life. That one phone call on February 7th, 1995, buy the book and read about it. I'm kidding. Now, one final question before we wrap up. And this is one that I didn't prep you on, but you've been on Status Go, my former podcast, before, so you should know this is coming. Okay. People have given of their time today. They've listened to us for 45 minutes now. What's one thing they should go do tomorrow because they listened to us today? One thing. Okay. I can see Alina smiling because she knew this was coming.
I love this. It's so great. I will say why not to something new.
Say why not to something new. That's excellent. Who wants to go next?
I will. I would say ask an uncomfortable question.
Ooh.
Whether that be about how you lead or something you want to learn about or something that you want to know, but just ask the question.
I like that. Ron, how about you?
I think there's a fancy name for it. So recognize and realize, even though you've heard these words, like really internalize that every single thing that happens is supposed to. It's all unfolding as it should. And so even in the moments when you're heavily triggered or you stop listening or you're telling or you're really not open to somebody else's way of making sense of the world, you just pause for a second and just recognize even this is supposed to be happening. And there's something in here, and maybe it's not for you, maybe it's for the other person, and maybe just it's for both of you, but just pause. This is life. It's not a step towards life. It is life. Connect with people. They have something for you, and you have something for them.
I like that. Pause and listen, pause and think. I think for me, as kind of wrapping this up, my action would be, I'd encourage all of you to go look at your network. Take a spin through LinkedIn or Facebook, wherever you connect with people, and think of the community that's there. I reached out to these three people. I probably haven't talked. Well, I know, Ron, you and I haven't talked in ages.
Wow. Right.
Alita, I know you and I exchange messages and such occasionally, but we don't talk. But I reached out to you, and the answer was yes. Yes, I will do this. Yes, I'll join you in this conversation. And so to the listeners, I want you to think about, who are the people in your community that'll say yes when you want to have a conversation, when you want to talk about an uncharted moment or conjectural territory. There are people that will say yes. So I encourage our viewers, our listeners, to find those people in your network and reach out to them. Say hello. Guys, oh my gosh, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. I so appreciate it. I so appreciate you reading the book beforehand to prepare. I know it's not always easy reading it on PDF or even on a rough e-reader, but it is out now. Another shameless plug. And would love for the viewers, the listeners, if you so choose to pick up a copy, I would love to hear from you what it says to you. What things do you see in your own journey? I've heard from dozens and dozens of people thus far in the last 3 weeks since it launched about their own journeys. And oh my gosh, the stories are fantastic. So again, thank you all very much. To our viewers, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. Go and have a great day, and don't forget those actions for tomorrow.
Thank you,
Great
Jeff.
stuff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Thank you
so
Jeff.
much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining Digital Dialogue. Look for more episodes at noon Eastern Time on most Tuesdays of every month. Can't join the live session? You can watch the replay anytime on our YouTube channel.